Welcome to the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and welcome to the Bold Book of the Day podcast. This podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today's guest is a writer whose work sits at the intersection of healing, identity, and cultural truth. In her chapter, she opens a deeply personal story, one shaped by the profound loss of her mother in the healthcare system and the complex beauty of navigating Haitian, Caribbean, and American identities. But what makes her voice extraordinary is not just the pain she has lived through, it's the way she transformed the pain into purpose. Please welcome to this platform, Venchele Saint Dic.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nicholson.
You are an amazing woman, and let me tell you, one of the things we like to celebrate here is just amazing women just like yourself. So I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you writing this book. And just share a little bit about your origin story. What made you decide that now was the right time to share this chapter of your story?
Absolutely. So over the past few months, I've been really working with like an incredible group of women on this book collaboration called Confident You, Raw Conversations. And it's not just a book, it's really a collection of real, raw, and inspiring stories from women who chose courage over comfort, like in terms of what they've been through in their lives. And so to me, what inspired me to write this chapter and contribute to this book, as you saw, again, as I was working through it, the chapter began with this writing prompt, like asking which story of your life have you tiptoed around because you're still carrying someone else's judgment. And for me, that story or that the prompt resonated with me because it brought me back to the story of losing my mother, because of failures in the healthcare system. And that experience alone, when I was 25 years old, created a wound that I carried quietly for years. The discrimination that she faced in the system. I practically lived in the hospital with her because I wanted to make sure that she was receiving the care that she needed. And to make sure as well to portray to others that she had a support system, right? That she also experienced the lack of language support, even though my mother was well traveled, but this was her first time living, in the country. And so I, played an adult role at a very early age to help her navigate the system. And the absence of follow-up care. Even after she was released from the hospital, there wasn't much of a concern to follow up on her care. And that's something that sat deeply with me. And so when I finally wrote about it, I realized that I wasn't just revisiting grief, I was essentially reclaiming my voice. And I think that moment became the seed for this chapter, where writing is not just an outlet, but it's a way home to myself.
Were you an adult when you were encouraging and helping your mother through this season?
Yes, I was 25.
Okay, because I see I'm in the medical and the hospital setting also, and so I see younger family members trying to help navigate parents and helping them. Even though we have a system that will help to translate, I find that they prefer when they have a family member that is trusted to help them. By right, we still have to use a translator, but for some reason I see a lot of young people helping family to navigate this, and I think it's so difficult because they're going through the process as a translator and as a child, experiencing the pain of what's going on and the realization of what's going on, and still having to have a place where they can still be poised enough to understand what's being said and translate it. So I just was curious about that. Given the current news about how Black women are being treated in a hospital. Recently, just this past week, we've had two mothers that were put out of the hospital while they were in active labor. And so,
Mm,
and you may not have seen it yet, y'all. And if you haven't seen it yet, go take a look because it
mm,
is so painful to watch. But given that these kind of things happen where Black women are not getting the help that they deserve in some areas, in some hospital settings, and the distrust that we have with the medical industry because of the years of not being able to see people advocate for us and getting the kind of care that we deserve. It is heartbreaking to see this happening. I wanted to know, as a person that has experienced this, some level of, um, well, had to navigate the medical industry. Plus, you're helping a mother whose language barrier is one of the hurdles that she has to face. How did you deal with it, and how did you find that the support was there for the family member as a as a person that needed this very integral part of the industry? Like, you need someone to translate for you when you're in the hospital. How did you find that?
I think for me, looking back on it now, in my 30s, I think when you put children in a situation where they have to translate, and not again, like, not that she did that on purpose or what have you, but I think that when children inherently take on these roles, it's almost like you're going through what I call trauma stewardship. It's
Yeah.
almost like you're getting lost in someone else's pain. And that's what I have learned over time, that we're not here to get lost in people's pain. We're here to steward it responsibly. And when you have someone who's not able to communicate, or she's able to communicate but not as clear as it could get, as she can be,
Yeah.
it poses it the dynamic, the relationship between the child and the parent becomes a little bit compromised,
Yes.
because now you are vicariously living what they're going through in real time. And you also, as a child, when I think about, when I was like in my teenage years, um and helping her, like going to appointments with her, um you essentially being in the personal business of that person.
Yes.
But in any normal
Yes.
situation, you would have never known about it.
Yes.
So it's hard. It's a tricky situation. You want to play the role, like in my case, my mother was, my mother first, and my best friend. And so I wanted to make sure that she knew, just like I would want someone to do that for me, that she had
Hmm.
support, that she was not alone in this system that she was not familiar with,
Yeah.
because it's not her country. And then at the same time, now that I think about it, it was a form of trauma bonding, a trauma stewardship bonding.
Hmm.
Um, so yes.
And just to address that issue of you having to play a role where you feel like you're almost invading her privacy because you are there with her almost the entire time. But although you may have felt that, she may have felt that this is a very necessary life support at this time.
Right.
So there's, two things can be true at the same time, where you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm here, here in all of her business, when she probably wouldn't even tell me all of these things if it weren't that I needed to be here to advocate for her and to support her.
Yes, I do agree that I did live in this liminal space of advocating for her. I'm not going to sit here and say that I knew all of the ins and outs. I think if nothing else, um I translated information for her pertaining to, medication, treatment. But even then, I didn't know all of the ins and outs.
Right.
all the intricate details. I think, if nothing else, because we live in a society where everything, well, it's supposed to be documented somewhere. She would
Hmm.
go home and do the reading by herself, and then maybe have these conversations with other adults. So I just want to clarify that too.
Yeah. Was there a specific piece of writing or journal entry, or maybe a poem, or even a letter that shifted something inside of you to contribute to this book?
I think for me, it stemmed from, like, when I think about my earliest experiences. I don't have a book or poem in particular that guided me during that period of time, but there is a poem by Maya Angelou, "Still I Rise," that I think I've been carrying with me in my life. That has really helped me understand. How to contextualize my silence. I think about her earlier book about "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings." And
Hmm.
that's what writing helped me do for this chapter. It really helped me bridge the silence around me. Um, the notebooks that I kept, which I no longer have, but I think these notebooks earlier on, when I think about my introduction to writing, they became like my confidants. And I think later on, therapy sort of helped me understand the weight behind, the words, so that
Yes.
combination of culture, silence, the grief of my mother, and reflection, and remembering this poem by Maya Angelou, "Still I Rise," it really shaped the writer that I am today.
I think most authors have a moment in time when writing first became a lifeline for them. And maybe for you, it was that Maya Angelou moment.
Yes, and then I think also too, many people fear writing about painful moments as well.
Hmm.
Because to me, I learned to write from my scars, not my wounds. And that means waiting until I have clarity, not just emotion. And therapy really helped me understand the trauma underneath, like, these experiences that I shared with you earlier.
Yeah.
Writing instead, how can I say this, help me process the trauma, and time helped me to see which stories were ready to be told. So to me, when I think about the fact that this innate fear that people may have about writing on painful moments, healing isn't linear, so neither is writing,
Yeah.
but both do require some level of honesty.
Losing your mom in the healthcare system is traumatic, of course. And there's so many families that have these experiences, but they don't know how to talk about it. And you just said that, right? And it's not linear, but it is still therapeutic. What emotional truth were you ready to confront in this chapter?
Um, that's a very good question. I think the emotional truth, or one of the emotional truth that I was ready to confront, is perhaps my struggle with cultural identity in my line of work in public health, and then also just taking care of an ailing parent at the
Hmm.
time, because I do think that culture comes with expectations, from family, from society, from our own history. And we're taught to perform strength and to
Perform
avoid,
strength. Repeat that for the people in the back.
yes, we're taught
Perform
to perform
strength.
strength,
Ooh.
to avoid vulnerability,
Mhm.
to work
Yes.
twice as hard. And I think if we're not careful of the narrative that we're painting for ourselves, those messages will eventually shape how we express ourselves
Yes.
in different circles. And so to me, writing helped me unlearn those pressures. I think it's where I stopped seeking validation and I started reclaiming my own truth.
So deep, so many things I'm thinking about, all the things you just said, but it is true. And I wanted to add that, we when we start to journal and we start to write things down, sometimes you don't even have clarity. You don't know what emotions you're hiding. You don't know what emotions are suppressed. But just start to write. Just start to get that, the habit of putting something down on paper based on an experience that you just had. Now, what do you hope readers understand about grief and advocacy from your chapter?
I think for me, when I think about my chapter explores how writing, becomes a tool for healing. That's why my chapter is titled "Healing Grace."
Mhm.
It's a tool for healing. It's a tool for clarity and cultural reclamation. And so, through the story of losing my mother in the healthcare system and navigating identity across, the Haitian, the Caribbean, and American cultures, I'm pretty much showing that writing can help us process trauma. It can help us honor our truth. And, we can, if we want to, rewrite the parts of our story that were shaped by others' expectations. But all of this does come with some level of honesty and some level of self reflection. And so the chapter, I would say, blends, personal narrative, trauma informed reflection, and then some practical prompts to help readers reclaim their authentic voice with grace.
Did you have a problem writing your chapter?
That's a very good question. Yes, I did have some issues because of the fact that I had to revisit um, the journal entries that I had written long ago um, about this experience, and then also to thinking about trying to infuse my story based on my public health background, like really playing this dual role
Mm-hmm.
of talking about it from a personal standpoint, but not being so rigid where it almost feels like I'm writing something for how can I say, like a technical report, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my line of work in public health, and since you work in the healthcare system as well, public health taught me to identify patterns, to name root causes and understand systems. Writing about the death of my mother, it doesn't require all this technicality because there's no way for sure that I'm going to remember um if people did everything they could, to save her life. That's something that I will never know. And for me to write the chapter, I had to unlearn, like to put that to the side, uh, and then really try to honor the story as it was, and the emotions, the anger, and then the lived experiences with her in the healthcare system. And so I did try to merge those two worlds. And again, like there were days where I think that it was a hit, and then on the days where it was a miss, I had to give myself grace and just say to myself that whatever I've written is enough for right now. And then as time goes on, because I do believe that I have more chapters in me to write and more books to write, that I will be able to create a space um, to tell other truths, other emotional truths that come up for me.
You've mentioned navigating multiple identities, and that you are Caribbean, you are Haitian, you are American. How did these layers and deep layers from who you are contribute to you writing this story? How were you able to layer in the influence of your Haitian community, your Caribbean self, and the American in you?
Um, I would say when I think about my cultural identity, I think for me, when I was writing the story, I wasn't writing for, like, I was trying not to write from one identity. I think I was trying to write from all of them.
Right.
So I was writing from the daughter's perspective, from the child of an immigrant, from the perspective of a caregiver, the perspective of being a friend, the person who had to be strong, the person who didn't feel seen. Um, and I think now that I think about it, like most of us haven't been taught to hold all of those layers at once. So the story sort of becomes flattened. And I think that writing gave me a space to say that this is who I was, this is who I became, and this is who I'm still becoming. And I think in my process of honoring all of these layers instead of choosing just one, like the story perhaps became more whole, more honest, and more human.
When you were writing, did you think that I have to incorporate some of the foods or the Haitian culture or some of the stories of my American experience, or maybe how do people see me as a Caribbean woman?
No, because I just thought that it would be, the draft went through, I think, multiple revisions. I think about three revisions. And I think that's the risk that you take when you try to write the story. You have to sort of pick and choose which pieces of the puzzle are going to fit this chapter that you're going to be writing.
Yes.
And for me, I'm trying to think about, there's so much that's coming up for me, because when we're talking about people that come from diasporic or immigrant or um, backgrounds, the marginalized backgrounds, even though I don't like to use the word marginalized, identity is not linear because it's influenced by cultural expectations, survival strategies, systemic inequities, family roles, language and power, and then socioeconomic realities. So I know that when I was writing the chapter, if I didn't acknowledge these layers, even though not all of it was included in the chapter, right? Because you do have character limits. I think that I would have risked telling a story that isn't fully mine.
Hmm.
Um, Again, like one that's shaped by external expectations rather than internal truth. And when we talk about internal truth, it's gonna be, with time, it becomes distorted unless you're revisiting the story over and over again. It's like going to a therapist and then they asking you to tell of your origin story. And each time you meet this therapist, the angle changes without you even noticing that. And I think that's why trauma informed writing for me, in it invites me to hold each layer with some level of curiosity. So instead of asking, well, which identity is the right one, um, I had to think about, well, which identities were present when this story happened to me with my mother.
Mm.
And by shifting the question, I think it deepens the clarity. It also reduces self blame, and it grounds my writing in authenticity.
The book is called Confident You. Do you feel like you have reached a different level of confidence since writing and publishing this book?
So the book is still, well, again, because it's a collection of stories, it will be published, I believe, towards the end of November.
Hmm.
Um, but in terms, like, do I feel confidence since writing this chapter? I would say to a certain degree, even though I know that it's the story is coming from my perspective as a child. And my mother's not here to sort of corroborate or negate some of what I'm against, negate my thoughts on my experience. um Writing to me does not make you confident overnight. At least for me, it didn't. I think all it did for me was give me clarity. And I think clarity naturally builds confidence.
Yes.
And I think that as I was writing the chapter and I started to see the patterns, the pain, the resilience, my identity without filters, I think I stopped apologizing for who I am, because we do live in a society where women are taught to apologize for being, for achieving so much in their lives. And writing just, cuts through all of that fluff. I think if nothing else, writing helped me hear my own voice without judgment. It really helped me understand my mother's story. It helped me understand my cultural story and the ways that trauma shaped my decisions during that period of time. And I think with that understanding, perhaps came a quiet, grounded confidence. I guess the kind that comes from knowing yourself and not performing for others.
Thank you. I like to say that confidence is not something that you arrive at, but confidence is the result of who we are every day.
Mhm.
How do you define confidence?
Um, I think confidence to me, I would agree with you. It is not a destination, it's more of a journey. But to me, when I think about how I have developed confidence is when I made a conscious choice to live a life that I'm proud of, and to live a life um, that's not dictated by other people's choices. In terms of defining confidence, I don't think I have arrived to a clear definition yet. Um,
Well, maybe you can steal my definition.
no, no, that's a great, no, I think to me, the way I'm defining confidence would be confidence to me is clarity. I think
Mm-hmm.
also based on what
Yeah.
I shared with you earlier, it's really it's a quiet knowing that comes from understanding who you are. And that comes from knowing what shaped you.
Yes.
And then also what you no longer need to carry. So when I reflect on my life, and then when I think about how I've developed confidence over time and resilience, that's what I would say. So for me, confidence it isn't loud. It's not perfection. You're not competing against someone. You're competing with yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
really not performing strength. I know I've been saying that a lot. Um, but it is the grounded feeling that you get when your inner voice finally matches the life that you're living with or without other people's permission.
I agree with you 100%. And two things can be true at the same time. That confidence comes from clarity. The more clear you are about what you are doing, what your experience is, and what you want to contribute, the more confidence you are with serving. So I agree 100%. And so, with that said, what advice do you have for writers who have a story to tell? They have a big idea, but fear is holding them back. Fear of being judged, fear of not feeling like they know enough to complete a book or to even have the grammar to write a book. What kind of advice do you have for up and coming writers?
I think I would say to them, if you tell the truth on the page, even if it's messy, even if it's unfinished or uncomfortable, I promise you that you will meet a version of yourself that you've been waiting years to finally see. And so I wouldn't shy away from that challenge. I would lean into it,
Yeah.
because writing won't. I mean, I can tell you from experience that writing won't magically erase pain, but it will
Mhm.
give you clarity, which is the central theme of our conversation today. And
Yes.
clarity is what makes transformation possible. So I guess my bold promise, if you will, is that your story written with honesty and grace can change not just your life, but someone else's life who has been silently waiting for permission to speak.
All right. You guys heard the bold promise already. Thank you. Thank you. You know, you've mentioned a number of times about authenticity and reclaiming your authentic voice may mean one thing to you and another to someone else. How do you what does reclaiming your authentic voice mean to you?
Hmm. I would say reclaiming your authentic voice means telling your story without shrinking, without editing, without translating yourself for other people's comfort. I think reclaiming your authentic voice, I'm trying to think about how I've exercised it in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the moment when in the context of writing, I think it's the moment when you stop writing from survival mode and you start writing from truth. I think it's really about choosing your voice over expectations of people, because systems sometimes can shape us. And sometimes we can decide to go rogue and just do our own thing, um, which I highly recommend. But it's really choosing your voice over the expectations, judgments, or fears that once shaped how you showed up in the world. So, really creating your own blueprint instead of following someone else's blueprint. That's what I mean by reclaiming your authentic voice.
Beautifully said. How did you get how were you how did you come, into this space to write with the people who are creating confident you? Like what was the trigger for you to say, you know what? Um I'm going to be a part of this. And how did you even get into that space?
I mean, the way that I got into that space is because I was invited as a guest on this podcast host, Julie DeLuca Collins. So I was invited to her podcast. And then I would say a few weeks later, she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think that you would be great. You like your story would be a great addition to the book." And so that's how I got into the space.
Wow.
Um, but then again, I also thought about it from the standpoint of alignment. When she talked a little bit about the project, I said, you know what, let me just ask for some more information, because I'm one of these people. I want to gather all the information I can before I make an informed decision. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I met some of these wonderful women, I said, you know what, maybe this is a story that I can write about. Because writing to me at some point, like, it just was the only place, like, where, like, my grief, like my cultural identity and my questions had room to breathe.
Yeah.
And so I thought that perhaps this might help someone out there, right? And then really tap into my trauma informed storytelling, talk about my coaching, and then hopefully that will create spaces where others can reclaim their voice with grace.
Tell us a little bit more about your coaching.
So I am a writing coach, where I help businesses and individuals use writing as a branding strategy. Again, with the advent of AI, I also review AI related content, and it's all part of, like I said, creating spaces where others can reclaim their voice with grace, and then helping people tell their stories and helping them process it in real time, and then helping them use writing like to as a tool, right, that will help them explore their emotional, and the layers that we've been talking about of their stories that aren't visible in the data, the day-to-day data that they keep up with, for marketing purposes and what have you. And it's all about really helping them regain clarity in their stories, um, and really helping them use it to heal, to inform, and also create belonging and create more communities.
If your mother could read this book and, well, especially your chapter, if your mother could read your chapter, what would you want her to know for sure?
What would I want my mother to know? One thing I wish, and I know this is a bit naive, is that from a spiritual standpoint, I think that I would want my mother to know that I finally understand her sacrifices. I
Hmm.
mean, I understood them. I want to say that I understood them, but when you play the role of a caregiver in some shape or form, sometimes those insights sort of elude you. And so I would want my mother to know that I finally understand her sacrifices, her fears, her love, and the ways that she protected me even when she lived in a system that she was not familiar with, and constantly tried to protect me. um, and I think also too is I'm not carrying anything anymore related to that situation as a wound,
Amen.
but as wisdom.
Yes, amen. Amen. Oh, that's a beautiful message. As a
Mhm.
mother, that's a message that I would like to take from that also.
Of
That,
course.
you're not carrying it as a wound, but as wisdom. Oh, girl, that's another book right there.
Yes, speak it into existence.
Absolutely. Today's conversation was really beautiful, talking about healing and identity and culture and the power of the written word. Okay. I will say it again and again. Words can heal you, and they
Yes.
are powerful. So, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for talking to us about this book that is up and coming, and your chapter that is Healing Grace. That is, I'm sure it will change someone's life. And thank you for being obedient and following the
Mhm.
call, answering that call to write this story. Now, if anyone is listening, would like to get in touch with you and be a part of your tribe and learn from you and how to write and do all the things that you are helping this world with, how can they join you?
They can join me by following me on all social media channels. I'm mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram, and then also visiting my website at www.pathwaycoachwriting.com.
Beautiful. Now, before you go, the book is not out yet, guys, because I would have said where to get it. Okay.
Yes.
But if you follow her, you'll be a part of the journey when the
Yes.
launch is happening, and so you can support. Now, there are three questions that I like to ask my guests before they leave. So I'm gonna do the same, and I hope that you're ready. She kind of gave us a bold promise earlier, but I'm gonna ask her to repeat.
Yes, I will. I can repeat. I'll try.
But thank you. Even though sometimes I love it when you're just overflown with ideas, and it just comes out because it was the right timing. Timing is, sometimes you can't make things up. Timing is right. What's
Hmm.
one bold promise that you can share with the audience?
I think I had mentioned, let me think, like the bold promise to me was not to give up on your story and to understand that if you tell the truth on the page, even if it's messy, unfinished, or uncomfortable, you will surely find a version of yourself that you've been waiting years to finally see. And that I do believe I mentioned that writing just doesn't erase your pain. It really just gives you clarity, and clarity is what makes transformation possible. And so my bold promise is that your story, written, with honesty and grace, can change not just your life, but someone else's life who has been silently waiting for permission to speak. So by you not speaking, it's delaying the process for someone else. So, get the word out.
Yes.
Get
The
the
bo-
word out.
yep, speak up and speak out and help someone else.
Seriously.
What's the bold statement that you can share with the audience that may cause a paradigm shift?
So to me, because I work in public health, I would say that my story is a form of public health. We talk
Mhm.
about systems, we talk about data and inequities, but we don't realize that stories are how people learn to trust and to heal and to feel seen. And so our narratives, carry data. They carry emotional data, they carry cultural data, generational data, using my story as an example. And so when you're writing honestly, you're not just journaling, you're disrupting silence, you're challenging stigma, you're reshaping how communities, whether it's your community or another community, understand identity, trauma, and resilience. So if we treated storytelling with the same seriousness as we treat health systems, I think that we are on our way to building a more humane and connected world.
Well said. What's a bold move that you would like to make in the future? I see that this book is coming. I hear all of the stuff that you've done already and are doing. What's for the future? What do you have planned?
So for the future, there is one bold move that I would like to make in the future, which is to become a TEDx speaker. But that's another conversation for another time. But I would say the bold move that I want to make is to build a global writing sanctuary. So it sort of build an ecosystem where writing, emotional well-being, culture, and public health intersect. And I would want it to be a space where people can transform their stories to trauma-informed practices, cultural reclamation, and community support, which are the central themes in my chapter. So everything has purpose to me, because healing shouldn't happen, in my opinion, in isolation. And I would want my business, Pathway Coach Writing, to evolve, from a coaching practice into a full storytelling institute. So really publishing works that honor, voices that have been marginalized, training practitioners in narrative healing, whether it's in the medical sector or other fields of study, and really building a collective of writers who change systems with their stories. So my bold move really is to make storytelling a recognized, evidence-based tool for healing and leadership at scale.
The woman has big dreams, guys. And it's so imperative that we connect. We met, I believe, at the 54th annual legislative conference.
Yes, Congressional Black Caucus. I
Yes,
remember.
we met there. And just collaborating. I invited her because she, was there, and I believe you had a book, uh, and
Yes, there was a.
something.
I think I
Yeah,
had mentioned
something. So I
something.
invited her, and now here she is. Here she is, a contributor to the up and coming Confident You with her impactful chapter, Healing Grace. And I opened my platform to her, and here she is coming to open her arms and wisdom to you guys. So please, if there is something that intrigues you, reach out and touch and make sure that you stay connected. Also, I do know somebody that you can send your audition to if you want to get on that TEDx stage, girl.
Yes. So I will be reaching out to you soon. So you already know.
All right. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing. And I wish you all the best. If you are listening and you would like to write your book and get your book idea out of your head and onto paper, please send me an email at authordnicholson@gmail.com, or you can go visit the website, boldpublishing.com. I help you get your book idea out of your head and publish so you can make some money, honey. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.